The hotel room that forces you to dream the same thing. The sound of a woman's voice pulled Mark Wheeler out of his sleep. Soft at first, then sharp, urgent. Wake up before he does. His eyes shot open, but he wasn't in his motel bed anymore. He stood barefoot in a long, dim hallway. Red exit signs flickered on both ends, and the carpet under his feet was soaked, as if it had rained indoors. Every door was closed except one. Room 103. He tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy, humming like static. From behind the cracked open door came a sound. Slow, wet footsteps. He backed away, heart pounding. Then the door creaked wider on its own. A shadow moved inside, tall and uneven, as if the figure's body didn't know how to stand right. The woman's whisper came again, right next to his ear now. Too late. Mark screamed, and suddenly he was sitting upright in bed, drenched in sweat, the neon glow of the motel's vacancy sign pulsing through the thin curtains. The clock on the nightstand flashed 3:17 a.m. He fumbled for his phone. He'd been dreaming again. The same dream. Every single night since he checked into room 103 of the Sierra Vista Inn. He swung his legs off the bed, trying to convince himself it was just stress, just exhaustion from his long drive through New Mexico. But when he looked down, his bare feet left faint wet prints on the old wooden floor. He froze. There had been no rain for days. That's when he saw the note under the bed. A torn piece of motel stationery, yellowed at the edges. The same handwriting the cleaner had described years ago. It read, in shaky blue ink, "You dreamed me here." Mark's breath caught in his throat. He'd heard about this place. The dream room, they called it online. The room that forced everyone to see the same thing. But he thought it was just folklore, an urban legend turned roadside attraction. Now he wasn't Sundi. He shoved the note into his pocket and tried the door. The hallway outside was dark, silent, except for the faint flicker of that same exit sign from his dream. He wanted to believe it was coincidence. Bad wiring, maybe. But the hallway smelled faintly of rain and old perfume. He walked toward the sign, trying to shake off the nightmare's echo. His pulse slowed when he reached the end of the hall, until he turned back toward room 103. The door was open. He hadn't left it that way, and this time, the whisper wasn't in his head. It came from inside the room, soft and deliberate. Wake up before he does. Mark froze, every muscle locking in place, because now he knew. He wasn't dreaming anymore. Something inside room 103 was awake. When the sun rose over the desert, it found Mark still sitting outside the motel office, clutching a cold cup of coffee he hadn't tasted. The manager, a thin man with nicotine fingers and a lazy eye, hadn't believed a word of what happened. Room 103's been closed for years, the man said, unlocking the office door. You're in 105. You sure you weren't dreaming, son? Mark didn't answer. He'd woken up in 105, yes, but his keycard said 103. He'd booked that room online through some third-party site. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone had put him in the wrong one. But the wet footprints, the note under the bed, that wasn't a dream. He slid the crumpled piece of stationery onto the counter. The manager's cigarette stopped halfway to his lips. Where'd you get that? Under the bed, Mark said. I didn't write it. It was just there. The man stared at it for a long time before speaking again. I told her to throw every one of those away. Her? Lydia, the maid. The man exhaled smoke, voice low. She used to clean 103 before we sealed it. Said she found notes like that all the time. Different handwriting, but same message. Always about dreaming. Mark rubbed his temples. Why didn't you just shut this place down? The manager gave a dry laugh. You think I can afford that? We just lock the door, let the stories die. But they hadn't. That night, curiosity pulled Mark back. He told himself it was for his article. He was a freelance journalist, after all, always chasing the next viral piece. The motel that makes you dream the same thing. It practically wrote itself. He waited until midnight, then crept down the narrow hallway. The air grew colder the closer he got to 103. When he reached the door, he saw the edges of yellow tape still clinging to the frame. "Do not enter." He hesitated. Then, against every rational thought, he slid his card into the eater. The light blinked green. The door opened with a soft click. The room smelled like dust and something faintly floral, like perfume long faded into the walls. Everything inside was untouched. Bed made, lamp crooked, a Bible open on the nightstand to a page about dreams. He lifted his camera, snapping a few photos. When he zoomed in on the bedspread, he noticed something strange. A faint handprint in the dust, small and perfectly shaped. Mark felt a chill crawl up his neck. He turned off the flash and listened. Somewhere behind him, the air shifted. The quiet kind of movement that only happens when someone else is in the room. Then the lamp flickered once, twice, and the clock on the nightstand blinked to life. 17 a.m. He hadn't realized until then. He'd lost track of time completely. A whisper came from the dark, soft but unmistakable. "Wake up before he does." The camera fell from his hands. Mark's scream caught in his throat as the lights went out completely. The sound of his dropped camera still echoed through the room when something brushed past him. Light, like fabric moving in slow motion. He fumbled for his phone, the flashlight beam cutting across the bed. The handprint was gone. The sheets now looked freshly smoothed, tucked tight as if by invisible hands. Then he heard the breathing. It came from inside the bathroom. Shallow, uneven, the kind of breathing that only happens when someone's trying not to be heard. "Hello?" Mark whispered, voice trembling. "Who's in there?" The faucet began to drip. One drop, then two, then a steady rhythm, each splash louder than the last. He crept closer, the beam shaking. The bathroom door was half open, mirror facing the hall. When he reached out to push the door, the whisper returned, this time right behind him. "Wake up before he does." He spun around. No one was there, but when he turned back, his reflection in the mirror had changed. The man staring back wasn't him. Same body, same shirt, but the eyes were wrong. Darker, tired, as if something was wearing his face. The reflection smiled. Mark stumbled backward, hitting the dresser. The lamp flared back on by itself, flooding the room with harsh yellow light. The clock still read 3:17 a.m., frozen, unmoving. Then, from the corner of the room, he noticed movement. The shadow of someone sitting in the armchair by the window. "Who are you?" Mark demanded. The shape shifted slightly, but said nothing. The outline was of a woman, her hair falling over her shoulders, head tilted toward him as though she was studying him. Mark took a step closer, his heart pounding so hard it made his vision pulse. "You're the one from the dream, aren't you?" Silence, then a faint voice, almost kind. "You dreamed me here." Mark froze. The same words as the note, the same voice that had haunted him every night. "I didn't dream you," he shouted. "You're not real." The woman slowly raised her hand and pointed at him. "Then why can't you wake up?" Everything in the room started shaking. The walls, the lamp, the dresser drawers sliding open. The air grew heavy, electric, the sound of wind roaring through a space that had no windows open. Mark grabbed his phone, trying to record, but the screen only showed static. Then, behind him, a second voice spoke. Low, male, deep enough to rattle the floor. "He's awake now." Mark turned, but there was nothing there. Just his shadow stretching across the wall, long and twisted. The whispering stopped. The air went dead still. Then the door slammed shut behind him. The lights cut out again, and in the darkness, something began to move toward him, not walking, but dragging itself across the carpet. Mark pressed himself against the wall, gasping, "Please, let me wake up." But the last thing he heard before the room went completely silent was that same voice, inches from his ear. "You already did." When Mark opened his eyes, morning light was streaming through the window. The birds were chirping outside. Room 103 looked perfectly normal. The Bible was closed. The clock showed 8:02 a.m. No dust, no whispers, no cold air. Just stillness. He sat up slowly, hands trembling. For a moment he convinced himself he had dreamed it all. The hallway, the woman, the voice. Maybe exhaustion had finally caught up to him. But then he noticed the note on the nightstand. It wasn't the same one from before. This one was clean, freshly written. "Check the hallway." He froze. His chest tightened as he turned toward the door. Through the peephole, everything looked quiet. The long motel hallway glowed under the fluorescent lights. But something was different. The exit signs weren't flickering anymore. They were all dark, except for the one right at the far end. It blinked red, slow and steady. Mark hesitated, then stepped out into the hall. His shoes echoed on the old carpet. The air smelled faintly metallic now, like ozone before a storm. As he reached the center of the hallway, the lights above him buzzed, a low electrical hum that made the back of his neck tingle. The last exit sign flickered again, and then, just beneath it, he saw a shadow. A woman standing perfectly still, her head tilted. He raised his phone, trying to film, but the screen filled with static again. His pulse quickened. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "Who are you?" he shouted. The woman didn't move. Then she lifted her arm, pointing behind him. He turned. Every motel door in the hallway had changed. Each one now bore the same number, 103. He stepped back, shaking his head. No, this isn't real. This isn't real. But as he turned in a full circle, all he saw was door after door, all marked 103, stretching into infinity. The woman's whisper came again, echoing through the hollow. "Oh, you can't leave until someone else dreams you here." Mark ran toward the blinking exit sign, but the closer he got, the farther it seemed. The floor felt softer, heavier, like moving through water. His phone slipped from his grip, hitting the carpet with a dull thud. The screen blinked once before dying. He fell to his knees, gasping, and looked up just as the lights began to fail, one by one, plunging the hall into darkness. The last thing he saw before it all went black was the woman standing over him, her face finally visible, pale, expressionless, and identical to his own. A week later, a couple on a cross-country road trip checked into room 103 at the Sierra Vista Inn. They stayed one night before leaving in a panic, reporting that both had the same dream, standing in a hallway lined with doors, each one marked with the same number. When police searched the room afterward, they found only one thing under the bed, a torn scrap of motel stationery. It read, "You dreamed me here." And at 3:17 a.m., the light in room 103 flickered once more.